Hi, everybody. I'm Skip Elsheimer, and welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show. I'm in a different location now, and we normally watch 16mm films that we pull from our archive, but I'm not at the archive. So we're on the road, and we are helping process a collection of old videotapes and DVDs to open a video store here in Manhattan. And an interesting thing happened. I had actually gone to this video store back in the very early 90s, like probably 90, 91. And this was early in this video store's kind of history too. And my friend and I went, and it was right next to a laundromat, or it was like in the laundromat. I can't remember the details, but there were a bunch of shelves of stuff, and there was some oddity stuff. And so we rented Tribulation 99, which was a videotape of a film that Craig Baldwin made. And this is long before I knew who Craig Baldwin was. And so we rented that, and we rented Apocalypse Pooh. And Apocalypse Pooh was a video that had Winnie the Pooh footage, but was dialogue taken from Apocalypse Now. That was really clever, very funny. Tribulation 99 is a film, found footage, kind of clipped up film that purports to be about aliens taking over the planet, but I think was about U.S. involvement in Central America. So in processing this video collection, which was actually in another country for many years and then came back, I found this tape. It was Tribulation 99. It's the tape that I rented more than 30 years ago. For me, it's almost come full circle. So I might try to have some footage from where we're working. I'll see what I can get in the upcoming days, because we'll be here for a couple of days. But anyways, we're here to watch 16mm films and not having me blather on about VHS tapes. So we've got a bunch of films lined up, a bunch of little short films. The first one is a Cornet film, What the Frost Does, which, pretty self-explanatory, talking to kids about frost. The next one is After Autumn, and this is actually not about autumn. When I pulled it, and I was like, oh, this is about being old. So it kind of documents talking to someone about what it's like to be old. Might be a little depressing. Just a scooch. Next is Weather Watchers, which is by NASA. It talks about weather satellites. Then a March of Time film called Airways of the Future. And finally, we're going to round it out with a film about Telstar, about how wonderful the Telstar satellite was and what its potential is. So without any further ado, let's get started and watch some films. Enjoy.
One morning in autumn, before the first frost, a boy who lived on a farm was going to school. Do you know what his name was? Well, sometimes his mother called him
Samuel.
Sometimes his father called him Sam. His friends called him Sammy, and that's what we'll call him. Oh my, he forgot his lunch. Sammy had been wondering about the frost and if it would come tonight. Mother thought not, as she felt the warm breeze on her face. maybe not for another few weeks. And with that, off to school by a shortcut through the cornfield. Some of the corn was already gathered in shocks. The pumpkins had been picked and stacked in piles. But this time, there wasn't even one extra big pumpkin. And that wasn't good, especially for a boy who wanted a real big jack-o'-lantern. But what's that? Way off at the edge of the field. It was something orange, and Sammy had to find out if... Golly, a pumpkin on the vine. That means still growing. And it will grow bigger and bigger till the frost kills the vine. And if the frost doesn't come for 2 weeks, oh boy! If only the frost will wait, then Sammy will have the biggest jack-o'-lantern ever. But Sammy could see signs that the frost was coming soon. If you looked, you could see them too. Off in the woods, a squirrel was gathering nuts. If you looked carefully among the leaves of a bush, you could see a caterpillar getting ready for winter. And it isn't at all unusual to see flocks of birds flying south. Of course, Sammy spent most of his time during the next few weeks in school. As the days passed, the wind blew stronger and colder. But the pumpkin kept growing. The caterpillar had made his cocoon for the coming winter. But on the farm, there was work to be done before the frost came. Mother had just finished picking tomatoes. Don't they look good? Father was getting ready to harvest the rest of the corn before the frost came. And how were things with Sammy that October afternoon? His pumpkin had grown bigger, and he was a little eager to carve his jack-o'-lantern. Sammy liked to help put the hay in the barn for the winter. But he wanted to know if the frost would come tonight. Well, Sammy asked Father. Would the answer be no again? Well, and Father thought about it for a while and decided, yes, I think there'll be a hard frost tonight, Sam. Really? Now there's a pumpkin a boy could be proud of. And tomorrow, after the frost, Sammy would pick it for his jack-o'-lantern. Just before the sun set, the family came out to finish the work that had to be done before the frost. Father brought Crybaby the calf into the barn. Crybaby was too young to spend the cold night outdoors. Mother and Sammy picked the last of the ripe vegetables. And Father drove the tractor into the barn so that it would be easier to start the next morning. Then the work was all done. The sun set, the warmth of the day passed, and the cold night came. Sammy pulled up an extra blanket when he went to bed that night. For the first time in many months, the temperature was going to be freezing. And then Sammy fell asleep. And while he slept, the moon was big and bright. Not a cloud was in the sky. Not a tree was moving. The air was cold and still. The next morning, when Sammy woke up, can you guess what was the first thing he saw? It was frost on the window in beautiful patterns and designs. And over the whole farm there was frost. It was a thin coating of ice. Do you know a poem about the frost? When the frost is on the pumpkin and the fodder's in the shock, and you hear the kyuck and gobble of the strutting turkey cock, and the clacking of the guineas and the clucking of the hens, and the rooster's hallelujah as he tiptoes on the fence. Oh, it's then the times a fella is a-feeling at his best, with the rising sun to greet him from a night of peaceful rest. And he leaves the house bareheaded and goes out to feed the stock, when the frost is on the and the fodder's in the shock. By the time Sammy got outdoors, the frost was almost all gone. But it was still quite cool. Now for some exploring to see what the frost had done. The first place he looked was in the flower garden. The zinnias were killed by the frost, but Mother would plant new ones next spring. And look, the iris leaves had all fallen down. Well, the iris would bloom again next year. The marigolds were dead. But the frost hadn't hurt the sweet alyssum at all. And look at the leaves. Soon now they would fall and the trees would be bare. In the vegetable garden, Sammy found that the frost had wilted the cabbage leaves. The parsley was killed. But the pretty green gourd was ready for picking. Picking? That reminded Sammy of something. The pumpkin was fine. The frost had melted, but the vine had wilted, and the pumpkin had grown as big as it would get. So big that Sammy couldn't lift it. So big that Sammy would need some help. And to tell the truth, it was so big that it was even heavy for Father. Do you remember what Sammy was going to do with the pumpkin? Well, he made it into the biggest jack-o'-lantern that he had ever seen.
Wow.
Now that's a story. That's why.
My name is Howard Dury. Howard Frederick Dury. I was born in 1889, and I'm 82 years old. I've never gained anything in my life to amount to anything. Born poor and stayed poor. can cook most anything. Don't cook much except fry something. I live on fried goods most of the time. I don't eat like some people. Some people eat like a damn pig, but I don't. I just eat along ordinarily. When we were little kids at home, we didn't have much to eat. Daddy and I, we used to go to the mountain and cut wood, 50 cents a cord. Of course, that bought a lot of cornmeal at that time, and we lived on corn. That was what we lived on. Some people would starve to death on what I eat. Of course, they don't buy too much stuff. They don't really need it. Food's high. That's one reason why I don't have a telephone. That's right. About $10 a month I can use somewhere else. A lot of people tell me I ought to have one living here alone. Well, maybe I should, but I don't. And you're gonna shun my belly for telephone. Well, I do my dishes once a day. I learned that back when I was painting, right after my wife died. I'd come home here every night and I'd be tired as the devil and didn't want to do anything, you know. So I just quit washing dishes of an evening and switched over to the morning after I'm done with breakfast. I'll wash up everything. That's the day. Wash dishes once a day. I feel pretty good outside of my throat. I've had extra help. Yes, sir, extraordinary. I can thank the good Lord for that. I feel good enough right now to go out here and saw wood or do anything. I just can't go. I get started and I'm done stop. And all I can say is this. Kids are trying to tear down everything we built up in the last 100 years. Trying to tear it all down. Instead of trying to take care of it. And this drug problem is just like everything else. It's like blowing the hell out of everything. You can't figure out what in the devil they'd be thinking about. Taking the damn drug or blowing the hell out of everything. It don't make good sense. One of our biggest troubles is we got too many old people in the Congress. There's a bunch down there that ought to come out of there. Been in there too damn long. This place was a damn wilderness when I bought it. This whole hill up here was nothing but brush. I drug them out the hard way. Yes, sir, this is the place where I got stoop-shouldered on. Done it grubbing trees, grubbing brush. Now it's starting to grow back up again since I ain't able to work it. If I could keep on working, I'd be all right. But I can't keep it clean, and I don't want to stay around here and see it all grow up. I don't drive near as much as I used to. I used to be going 2 or 3 times a day or a week and going on Sunday, but I ain't been away on Sunday for I don't know how long, except to go to church. No, I don't like to stay away from home somehow or another. Seems like the older I get, the more I stick to home. I ain't been away but about 3 times since my wife died after night. Always home but dark. These darn young boys riding around there after night, they don't care where they drive. If they run into me, why, away goes my license. At my age now, if anything happens, they're going to take them away from me. So I better just lay low. Some people claim they never have a word with their wife, but I believe that's a lie. I believe most people have little arguments. I know we used to argue. She was a little bit like I am. She just kept working all the time around the house, kept the house and his kids. She was never sick too much. Just get old and wore out, I guess. I don't know. She was a wonderful woman. Had to be. We lived together 52 years. Well, there's an old saying that when you get old, why, and nobody wants you. That's the truth. Well, they never know, nobody never bothers you after you get old. I got a son, the only son I got. He don't know if I'm living or dead. He comes out about once or twice every 2 years or something like that. I was out this summer once. Come in and stopped and talked a few words to me. And then got in the truck and went on. I knew people to worry about dying, but I never worry about it. Hardly ever think about it. Even at my age, I very seldom ever think about it. I don't fear it. But that's the thing we're all going to do. And you got to do, so you just might as well make up your mind to go with it. I made my mind up about 6, 7 years ago. Yeah, I'm ready. Sit around here and everything's quiet and nobody about. You will doze off. You fade off and if you sleep very long at a time though, you'll wake up. Can't help but fall asleep.
From the sun's awesome furnace, from the deep bowels of the earth, nature's elemental forces have raged long before man's coming. Over the eons, man has feared their erratic, destructive power. He has offered up prayer and sacrifice to wrathful gods of sea and wind, to the deathly chill of the oncoming ice, to the torrential floodwaters, and to the terrible twisting force that dropped from the heavens. Then man began the slow turn away from witchcraft and superstition to the discipline of science. He fashioned crude instruments that set him on the path toward understanding the riddle of the elements. He developed ways to measure the relationship between the wind, temperature, air pressure, and moisture content of the skies. From the minds of Galileo, Torricelli, Fahrenheit, Celsius, the science of weather began to develop. And by the 19th century, a rough record of scientific prediction began to emerge. Today, those who keep an eye on weather's uncertainties have more sophisticated devices to record, to track, and to predict the behavior of the elements. Using computers, advanced sensors, and other tools of the space age, they seek to narrow the range of nature's secrets. And like those here at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, they are deeply engaged as the latest in the special line of professionals, the weather watchers. In our day, the weather watchers not only searched the heavens for signs, but launched sensitive eyes in the sky to scan the Earth in its atmospheric patterns. Since 1960, when the first orbiting weather satellite was launched by NASA, the United States has advanced its meteorological observation, information, and sensing systems. From the beginning, the scientists realized the limitations of their data gathered by polar orbiting satellites. They could scan a developing weather system only once every 12 or so hours. They looked for ways to keep a sharper eye on the same segment of the Earth around the clock. Starting in the mid-1960s, a series of geosynchronous satellites was launched. Riding in stationary orbit relative to the Earth's rotation, they can maintain a constant data-gathering vigil from 36,000 kilometers above the Earth. Improved resolution and infrared imaging devices were developed for subsequent satellites, adding to the refinement of the art of weather watching. By the late 1970s, in cooperation with European, Japanese, and Russian meteorological agencies, there will be 5 geosynchronous satellites providing general weather data on a constant basis from almost every corner of the globe. The weather watchers of today all across the country feed us a constant stream of updated readouts and predictions about tomorrow's weather. Many, however, are research specialists trying to cut down the odds on nature's surprises. One of these specialists at NASA concentrates his attention on hurricanes and severe thunderstorms. Bill Schenk.
We hope to improve the prediction of tornadoes. We think right now that the first step in this is being able to identify which areas later in the day severe thunderstorms will form that will predict or will generate tornadoes later. Once the cells have formed, we like to think that the best method is to take a probabilistic approach, either with regard to a specific point on the ground or a specific cell, as to the potential of that cell producing either tornadoes, hail, or other types of severe weather.
This team is part of NASA's Severe Storms Research Program, and they don't spend all their time in the laboratory or by a computer. They are working on a cooperative experiment between NASA, NOAA, Colorado State University, and the University of Chicago. Each year, during the peak period of severe storm activity, they pinpoint a likely trouble spot.
Rapid development southwest here in Stephenville, Brownwood area.
How far do you think that area is out there, Ed?
It's just about 150 miles or so.
150 miles?
And they get set to go out and eyeball it, close up, firsthand.
Tornado will go out at about 5,000 feet, and the Queen Air at about 15,000 feet at the measurement level.
They go by air. A prop-driven T-28 leads the way. The Queen Air, with special sensors, will work at medium altitudes when they all meet, in Bill Schenk's words, at the thunderstorm. A Learjet will work the highest level of the storm cloud, or cell, as the meteorologists call it. Working as an airborne observational laboratory, the 3 planes, with scientists aboard, will box and record the key elements of the developing storm. The T-28 will monitor the bottom of the cloud at around 5,000 feet. The Queen Air will take its measurements at the storm's mid-level, around 15,000 feet. At the boiling and swirling top of the anvil head itself will be the Learjet. Riding inside is the coordinator of the mission, Bill Schenk.
What you end up doing is combining the data from all 3 aircraft to see if there's a number of parameters whose conditions are all satisfied when a particular type of weather event occurs. Say if a tornado occurs, perhaps you have the collapse of the top, very strong inflow at low levels, and also perhaps some changes in the temperature and moisture structure on the upwind side of the storm. The current geosynchronous satellite measures parameters connected with the cloud structure, the cloud height perhaps, the cloud type, and can measure or infer the wind velocity from the movement of the clouds. It's a combination of the aircraft validating the satellite measurements and the aircraft complementing the satellite measurements.
352 radio at about 16 miles.
Okay, I understand. Where are you now?
I'm on the Lomita 166 radio.
The forces that produce the tornado cyclone are still one of the great mysteries in meteorology. One thing that we've noted over the years is the presence of curved lines of clouds that are moving towards the main storm, and these are often a reflection of the circulation in the lower atmosphere. The main thunderstorm can act as a partial obstruction to the flow and create boundaries which perhaps can lead to the rotation within it.
There is new growth occurring on the southwest flank of that cell.
We are studying the circulations in the lower atmosphere to see how the rotation gets concentrated in such a small area to produce the tornado. We have noted also a collapse of the cloud tops during the period which the tornado is produced. This factor, along with others, perhaps can lead to a better tornado detection and forecast system.
You said no. Okay.
The airplane photographs from the Learjet, since they are higher resolution and more frequent than the images from the geosynchronous satellite, serve as a way of examining in greater detail what the satellite is seeing and giving us a better interpretation of satellite data.
As the storm develops, additional data will be gathered at ground stations to supplement and refine what the aircraft and satellite findings will tell them.
Radar helps us, along with other sources, in the decision on which cells are the most severe. For example, a hook echo is an indication that the thunderstorm has rotation and indicates that the storm is becoming tornadic or is tornadic. There's also a lightning measurement device on the Queen Air, and it will relate the intensity and frequency of lightning strokes to the type of weather being produced in the storm, whether it be a tornado or hail or just heavy rain. People will call something a severe hurricane or a severe thunderstorm, and there are various classes of these. The key here is to measure them at the right place, at the right time, and with the right frequency.
Trying to predict when and where tornadoes may strike is just one part of NASA's ongoing storm research program.
At NASA, we're involved in tropical cyclone research as well as severe local storm research. Right now, we have a tremendous lack of simultaneous data of the wind field in both at low and high levels in a hurricane. The aircraft make measurements going in and near the center and then flying back out again. And it only covers a very small fraction of the total circulation of the storm. Whereas by taking images more frequently from the satellite, we can get much more information within the interior of the storm circulation.
The ultimate goal we're trying to do is to improve the detection and prediction of severe local storms, tropical cyclones, and then other weather features that people often don't associate with being storms, such things as dust storms, fog, frost and freeze prediction. And then we'd like to just understand more about these kinds of atmospheric processes as well, which should ultimately feed back into a better detection and prediction capability.
The computer continues to be the chief tool of today's weather watchers. After each mission, its arcane images and language give them some new answers and some better questions about severe storm behavior for the future.
It's pretty obvious from the data, I think, that you can make some quantitative estimates of parameters that are associated with both cloud growth or thunderstorm growth, and also what's happening on the top of dense cirrus shields.
It may take weeks, it may take years, but NASA's weather scientists carry on a constant dialogue of analysis and interpretation of the data they gather with a scientific wariness of coming to an easy set of answers.
Interviews of the people on the ground. There are so many different ways to make mistakes about a tornado situation.
The uncertainties of nature that held the ancients in awe are slowly being understood. In the coming decade, new satellites will show us weather conditions in finer detail and at faster rates. Advanced aircraft sensors will probe inside as well as around storm systems. To solve the inner mysteries of the world's weather is the challenge of NASA's scientists. A challenge which its weather watchers have dedicated their machines and minds to pursue day after day after day.
To the Washington offices of a newly established division of the United States Army Air Forces, in the critical summer of 1942 came a dramatic dispatch from Cairo.
Have 5 C-47s stand by to load special cargo.
Prepare to load 4 B-24s with rush cargo for Special Project 302.
Cargo for Special Project 302 will be delivered at airport at 1640 EWT.
In this historic hurry call for munitions for a fighting ally lay the first severe test of the Army's fledgling Air Transport Command. A call to deliver within 72 hours, by air and by air alone, 25,000 rounds of armor-piercing anti-tank ammunition to General Auchinleck's men in Egypt. On that black day, Hitler's Africa Corps was but 70 miles from Alexandria, key to the Middle East, to Suez and to India. Rommel believed victory to be within his grasp. But with their ammunition supply replenished and their courage unimpaired, the gunners of the British Eighth Army stopped Rommel's army in its tracks and turned the tide of the Desert War. The fledgling Air Transport Command of 1942 became, in time, the world's greatest airline. Its bases circled the earth. Its thousands of Army and civilian pilots grew as familiar with Karachi, Kunming, as with New York, Los Angeles, or Albuquerque. Flying key military personnel and high-priority freight from continent to continent became a commonplace. Among the duties ATC took on was the rapid transportation of war supplies, drugs to save the lives of fighting men, thousands of critical items of equipment needed to keep bombers and fighters in action in distant war zones. Another of its duties was to assure a continual flow of combat planes to the fighting front. To this end, ATC's ferrying division flew hundreds of planes a week from the factories to operating bases in distant combat zones. In addition, many a combat plane was flown by its own crew over routes laid out for ATC cargo planes. Planes which would have taken months to arrive by sea have been delivered ready for battle in a matter of days or even hours. And in the war's crucial period, when the ferrying division was created, the saving of a few hours more than once made all the difference between victory and defeat in local actions. Within quick reach by air ferry were such distant points as Australia or China, where for months Chennault's Flying Tigers stood alone as a token of America's promised aid. Building up the organization needed for operations on so vast a scale was a job of pioneering. Principles and techniques perfected by civil airlines in their relatively limited fields had to be adapted to the infinitely greater requirements of global flying. But a smooth operating routine was quickly achieved by ATC's personnel. Pilots and crews learned to conform to the many procedures which ensure security and efficiency. To meet any conditions of weather or terrain, and to provide for changes of destination, special equipment was made available at the airports of embarkation. In regular conferences, pilots and navigators were thoroughly briefed on the flight conditions they would encounter on their next hop. Radio operators were informed of any local regulations of radio control, which they must observe.
When at least 2 hours out from any station at your destination, you're to call this station and send your estimated time of arrival message. In this message, you will contain the call sign, the type, and serial number of your aircraft. Also, you're to request the weather for this particular field.
Pilots and navigators could check and recheck on detailed charts the course which they would fly. Ever increasing at the airports of ATC has been the number of cargo planes arriving and departing each day. For the monthly tonnage handled by ATC, the exact figures of which have been a closely guarded military secret, reached totals which before World War II would have seemed incredible. On the distant and difficult land fronts of the South Pacific, cargo planes have proved their effectiveness in moving in on short notice and in ever-increasing quantities arms and equipment which have figured as decisive factors in the campaign. In island warfare, where surprise attacks have won for the United Nations forces strategic advantages of tremendous importance, the speed of reinforcement, which air supply alone could give, has proved to be a trump card against the Japanese. One of the ATC's busiest routes, after the opening of the Mediterranean theater of war, was that across the South Atlantic, from Brazil to Africa. Since 1942, ATC planes have flown supplies across ocean and jungle to deposit them at otherwise inaccessible points far removed from ports or railheads. At villages deep in the heart of Africa, intermediate bases have been set up and equipped as way stations on the African supply route. At each base, the routines of ATC have been carefully followed. Arrivals and departures have been checked to schedules in the battle to keep abreast of the Army's stiff program of air deliveries. Planes have been serviced and refueled by ground crews familiar with all types of aircraft using the route. In case of emergency, spare parts have always been on hand. Any information airmen may have picked up en route has been carefully recorded and collated for the benefit of following flights.
Bob, did you have any trouble at all with your navigation?
The only trouble we had was with the natives.
What was that?
Oh, if you go out to your airplane at night, they'll take a shot at you.
Since 1942, there has been no military Shangri-La to which the ATC has not flown, even if 2 continents or 3 had to be crossed by air. Thus, in the work of America's Air Transport Command, modern technical genius has proved how the airways of war can become airways of peace, how aviation can bring to the remote corners of the world a new conception of the world itself. Already in lands long considered backward, native workers have learned to perform tasks which are shaping their habits and their aspirations for the future. Today, their airport jobs are those of routine maintenance. Tomorrow, they may be technicians and pilots, perhaps partners in the adventurous world to follow victory and peace. Thus, the U.S. public's interest in the world of air has grown and broadened as the scope and accomplishments of wartime aviation have become better known. And with total victory in sight, the miracle of the global airways, which will unite and serve the world of the future, has become, if not a fact, then a promise by no means remote. What benefits or problems the air transport of the future may bring still remain to be determined by the wisdom of the people in the post-war world and the skill of their statesmen. But in the space of a few wartime years, America and her allies have demonstrated beyond doubt that the material and technical problem of establishing and maintaining global airways can be solved, and that no physical obstacle can long remain to block man's inevitable conquest of the world of air.
In America, there is no secrecy, no iron curtain, as work is completed on a jewel-encrusted satellite called Telstar, designed to span oceans and link continents through a worldwide television hookup. Three feet in diameter, weighing 170 pounds, Telstar is a relay station in space. It is crammed with 15,000 intricate parts, whose purpose is to receive signals from Earth, amplify them 10 billion times, and transmit them back to the ground. The satellite marks the first time a private company has built a space vehicle and paid the cost of launching from its own funds. But most important of all, Telstar symbolizes space exploration as the peaceful servant of mankind, bringing faraway peoples, places, and events into the living room of any home, anytime, anywhere. And so, in the free and open and democratic way, all the world knows and waits as the countdown for Project Telstar gets underway at Cape Canaveral. The little communication satellite is tucked in the nose of a Delta rocket that towers 90 feet above the launching pad. $45 million in research and development, tens of thousands of man-hours. This is what they lead to. This is where they end, in the final, fateful seconds that are, for the launch crew and the rocket, the inevitable moment of truth. Follow the rocket's red glow, waiting for the blinding burst of flame that will signal the igniting of the second stage. "11 minutes after launching, Telstar is in orbit, circling the Earth every 160 minutes. Ground stations make contact, and the satellite responds. It relays not only television signals, but telephone calls, still pictures, and teletype messages. Before Telstar, relaying a live transatlantic television signal would have required a mid-ocean tower at the impossible height of 150 miles. Now TV stations can reach out beyond the horizon, around the curve of the Earth. Already special telecasts have crossed the Atlantic, America to Europe, Europe to America, heralding the day when 30 or more Telstars will girdle the Earth in a global network, helping nations find among themselves a common understanding, and in that understanding, a brighter hope for peace. In this search is remembered the words spoken 100 years ago by Abraham Lincoln, words about a divided country that today have equal meaning to a divided planet. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. As our case is new, so must we think anew and act anew.
That Telstar film is so great. I really like that, showing the image of the television, showing what's being broadcast and all that stuff, and the promise of our future. And Telstar, of course, was trying to establish ourselves, catch up to Sputnik, which the Russians had launched. But thanks for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow. If you like what you saw, you can buy us coffee. Even if we're not in the archive, we still drink coffee, and we still need it to do the menial, tedious tasks that we are always doing at AV Geeks. And so you can go to www.ko-fi.com/avgeeks, and then you can go to avgeeks.com and see other things that we have online. You can buy DVDs there. You can also hit the like button, the thumbs up button, subscribe button. Any of those things will help tell the world that you like AV Geeks. I've been able to peek in on some of the comments, even on the road, and I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and I enjoy reading what you write, and we will see you again soon. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Take care.